Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel, and welcome to Total War Warhammer. So this is continuing along with our tournament coverage for just random something awful members. We've got Choomander and Kief as the Imperials here, and we've got Kaza over here as the Orcs. This is going to be a pretty interesting match because these are both top tier sort of armies here. We've got kind of a strange setup from the Imperials. You've got the Central Chaos Waste again, and this is a kind of strange map, but both players have taken indirect fire artillery here. So, I mean, normally the problem here is that cannons can't get a good line of fire. We saw that in our last set of our last set, and but indirect fire can work a little bit here, as long as you can get that vision. Let's go ahead and slow us down so we can review each person's army in a little bit more detail. Now, we've got the Empire sort of over here. They've got 2 units of spearmen, 3 units of spearmen, possibly more. They've got the halberdiers over here. They've got some swordsmen up front. I do believe they've got 4 units of swordsmen. 2 units of swordsmen, great swordsmen. 2 units of swordsmen, 2 units of great swords. Nope, that's 1 unit of great swords. That's really strange. They've got 3 units of crossbowmen, three mortars. Karl Franz on, or sorry, the Empire General on the Griffin. They've got the demigryph knights. They've got a unit of handgunners. I mean, this is a very sort of eclectic and strange Empire army. You got a light wizard over here on the Pegasus. Over here for the orcs, you've got these 2 units of orc biggins. I believe they had 2 more units of orc biggins. They've got a unit of black orcs over here. They've got some goblins up front, goblins in the back. 2 units of those orc rock lavas. Got Azag the Slaughterer on the Griffin there, and they've got the Savage Orc Boar-by Biggins. I believe they had another one somewhere over here. Yep, they've got, in fact, 2 more Savage Orc Boar-by Biggins. Not my favorite against the Empire. I would much rather have the regular Orc Boar-by Biggins, just because they have that bonus versus large, so it would have been a little bit more reliable. Now, you don't often actually see the mortar from the Empire. Oh yeah, and there are other horses in a Ragnarok Spider, if I forgot to mention that, which I do believe I did. Now, the Ragnarok Spider by itself can probably deal significant damage to this Empire player over here. Demigryph Knights with halberds, though, can kill it. They just have to keep away from the rest of the Orcish cavalry. And these handgunners can also deal pretty good damage to it. Mortars are starting to open up on the Orcish lines here, dealing some damage, but they're hitting heavily armored units over here. Not necessarily the best or the easiest target to take out with mortars. You can see that it's doing a little bit of damage. You're getting some Shem's Burning Gaze against Azag the Slaughterer there, going right underneath him there. Very unlucky shot there. Yeah, mortars just constantly coming down here. I mean, I've never really enjoyed using these things, but I guess they could be useful given the current meta. Maybe I should give them another try. They're just really focusing their fire on that Black Orc unit, and it's taken actually some good damage. These units of Goblin Rock Lavas, not in range yet. They're coming up here, though, as fast as their weedy little legs can take them. Another unit of Shems, another Shems coming out here, putting out a lot of fire on the Savage Orc Boar-by Biggins. They're coming in to try and take out these handgunners, but they get hit by the net of Ammontok, and that's going to cause them to get hit by a decent number of free shots from these handgunners here. Azag the Slaughterer coming in, he's going to probably, I'm assuming, use Spirit Leech on this Light Wizard. I would have followed that up with a charge potentially, but as it were, that's what he's managed to get. Another Shem's Burning Gaze on Azag, and another miss. I mean, this is my levels of miss. This is the sort of misses that I get. Savage Orc Boar-by Biggins are going to get charged by the Demigryph Knights with the halberds, and they're charging straight into these units of halberdiers as well, trying to get at those handgunners, and that's going to be disastrous for them. I think that the Empire is in a pretty commanding position at this point in time, but you never know what's going to happen. Savage Orc Boar-by Biggins coming around the flanks, as are these units of Orc Biggins. It's going to be a long time before they get there, and all you've got right now is Biggins and these units of of goblins, rather. I mean, even though these Black Orcs haven't taken too many casualties, they're getting absolutely wrecked by the sheer amount of mortar fire. 3 mortars is an awful lot of mortars. Azag the Slaughterer needs to probably also get into this fight a little bit here. Probably going to see a Fate of Bajuna come down on these Demigryph Knights, and I would be very surprised if that is not what we see on them. There it is, Fate of Bajuna coming down on those Demigryph Knights with halberds. That's going to be a very key unit out of the fight, because if they're not here to fight the Ragnarok Spider, and we can see the Ragnarok Spider piling into combat along with the Orc Biggins, absolutely demolishing through this unit of swordsmen, no problem whatsoever. Demigryph Knights with halberds coming into the Spider as well. handgunners starting to get good shots against that Arachnarok Spider, and if that continues on for very much longer, they are going to be in very, very good position to do some damage there. Finally get a Shem's Burning Gaze, hitting the Azeg here. Azeg using Spirit Leech against Karl Franz is also getting charged there. I think that Burning Gaze actually traveled through and hit a lot of friendly units there as well. Here we get the Savage Orc Boarboy Biggins coming in to try and assist Azeg the Slaughterer. Azeg's actually going to lose his morale and flee from this fight here. I do believe he got another Spirit Leech potentially on the Empire General. Other than that, though, Net of Amintok coming down, he still needs to get something into these handgunners. They're still freely firing at the Arachnarok Spider. The Arachnarok Spider is going to lose its morale quickly if it's not done, if something isn't done about this. Biggins fighting Spearmen and Swordsmen, they're going to have no problem with that. Orc Boarboy, Savage Orc Boarboy Biggins are going to be able to sort of get around the backline here, but still not getting into these handgunners. Another unit of cavalry over here taking out these mortars, but again not getting into these handgunners. Azeg the Slaughterer back in the fight. He's going to come in to get a Spirit Leech off on the Empire General, and the Empire is actually starting to crumble in a couple of places. He just needs to keep the Spider alive long enough to win the fight for him. Here you're seeing another Shem's Burning Gaze coming off, just barely missing Azeg the Slaughterer. Azeg getting into the fight here, though. I don't know that that's a good idea. I do think Karl Franz and the Empire General, or the Empire General here is what's going on, is capable of beating Azeg the Slaughterer, especially when Azeg is on this low of health. You're going to see, in fact, that is indeed what is happening. He's going to have to get that guy out of here. Another Shem's Burning Gaze, even if he doesn't hit very, very well, is going to probably kill him, and look at his health. Just barely getting out of that fight. I don't think he's going to be able to rally, but at the same time, the Empire player losing a lot of his focus here. Those handgunners finally chased out of the fight. Still got some swordsmen coming back into the fight. Those demigryph knights with halberds still in the fight. But at this point in time, like, look how many units the orcs have compared to how many units the Empire have. Great swords are starting to finally take some fire from those goblins back there with their rock lobbers. Like, rock lobbers have actually been firing, it seems, for quite a while. I'm not 100% sure what they've been firing at. Looks like one of them's actually sort of being blocked still. No, it's firing. Okay. Yeah, fire coming in. I think some of it's hitting the Empire General as well. I do think that the Empire General is going to have to be careful. These Savage Orc Boarboy Biggins, still pretty deadly. Big morale hit, though, from Blood Roar there. That's going to be a bit of a swing. If these Savage Orc Boarboy Biggins run, though, from that effect, they are going to come back into the fight. Going after these crossbowmen over here, those crossbowmen are going to be facing the wrong direction, it looks like, to receive that charge, and they're not firing as well. That Blood Roar, big impact on that morale. A lot of these orc units running from the fight here, but they will probably rally once that Blood Roar effect runs out. That Arachnarok Spider coming back in would be crucial at this point in time. 2 units of Orc Boarboy Biggins coming into the fight. If they can get in there, they're going to be able to do some really major things there. Savage Orc Boarboy Biggins crushing straight through those crossbowmen, moving onto the swordsmen. Swordsmen facing the wrong way. That's going to be a big hit for them. So at this point in time, I think that the Empire player is in really big trouble, especially as these Orcish and Goblin units start rallying as soon as that starts happening. I mean, the Light Wizard has come into these Rock Lobbas, which is going to help a little bit, but those Goblins, if those Goblins got in that fight there, he'd actually be in a bit of trouble. Like, he's a very, very weak melee unit. He cannot actually fight these Goblins all that effectively. Still, though, Crossbowmen coming back into the fight. You've got just mass chaos and pandemonium. These Biggins are fighting their way into this fight here. These great swords doing a fantastic job of holding the line, but against 2 units of Biggins, they will lose. Karl Franz is going to need to make, or the Empire General is going to make some really amazing plays here. Coming into the Biggins, and they've got that bonus versus large. They've got immune to psychology, if I recall. No, not quite. That's the Black Orcs only. But you've got the Savage Orc Boarboy Biggins coming back into the fight, getting rid of a lot of that Empire infantry there as they sort of rout. Now, the Orc units are starting to run from that fight here, but here comes the Arachnarok Spider into that Empire General, and he is now fleeing as well. This is going to be the end for the Empire, I suspect. You can see, again, that hit there. That really caused some damage to him. Down to 185 hit points, and if that Spider keeps chasing him, that is indeed going to be the death of the Empire General. This is going to probably cause the remainder forces for the Empire to run here, and indeed that is what we see. So that was a close defeat by the Empire. It was going to be pretty close. It came down, I think, a lot to that Arachnarok Spider doing really, really good work there. was pretty close with Azza getting taken out relatively early in that fight, but a lot of interesting things going on. Those mortars, perhaps not the best choice to invest in 3 of them, although they did fantastic work there. You can see the difference in damage from something that is not armor piercing aiming at an armored unit, and the fire from those goblin rock lavas, which are armor piercing and were firing at softer troops. I mean, if these mortars were firing at goblins or for the orc biggins, they probably would have gotten a lot more kills. The black orcs, the remaining ones, even though they were getting shelled by mortars the entire time, ended up getting into soft units and were able to rack up 135 kills. Very, very impressive number. So that was a pretty interesting match. I think that both players were sort of focusing on very, very different things there. All right, so let's get into match 2 here. There we go. All right, here we've got Choomander and Kief as the dwarves versus Kaza as the undead. This is, again, one of those ones that I think favors the undead, but this is a very dwarf-friendly map. The Glacial Lake is very, very good, open for long-distance shooting. Typically, you're going to see that result in some good shots. Now, they do have 2 units of Vargeist, which are quite effective against dwarves getting into that back line, but the dwarves do have some good tools here. They've got the Ruin Priest, which is very good against these Hex Wraiths if they manage to get that. There's no Necromancer for Kaza, so it's going to be a little bit less spammy on the invocations of Nihek. There's going to be a long wait between each invocation of Nihek from Manfred, and you could potentially see the death of a unit between that. Strange sort of formation here from him. Let's go over the armies a little bit more closely. You've got the 2 units of Vargeist, and then you've got Manfred on the Dragon. You've got these units of Graveguard, standard, non-armor piercing, which is a very strange choice here. We've got the 1 unit of armor piercing Graveguard, but that's 4 units of all in all of Graveguard. You've got the 4 units of zombies, 1 unit of armor piercing Graveguard. You've got the Crypt Horrors and 2 units of Hex Wraiths. So this is a very low armor piercing army from the undead, but that might not be necessary. The dwarves, again, I think this is kind of cutting it close as far as the no corner camping rule goes. I'll have to sort of arbitrate this as it were, but we've got 2 units of cannons here. We've got Dwarf Warriors, Longbeards. We've got 3 units of Quarrelers. Got a unit of Hammerers, which is a little bit strange. We've got Ungrim Iron Fist. We've got a Ruin Priest. We've got 3 units of Dwarf Warriors with great weapons. And then sort of further up here, we've got Miners with blasting charges defending this little pass over here. So I'll think about this, but I'm not actually necessarily even sure what will happen, like, as far as this goes. Got some shots coming in against the regular Graveguard already from those cannons, so we're going to see how that continues along. But the Vargeist and the General are already flying straight up towards the Dwarves, and since the Dwarves just have Quarrelers, they don't have the Thunderers, they're going to have a little bit of a hard time dealing relevant damage to Manfred. And Manfred, you know, I mean, he is a very, very durable sort of unit when it comes to taking shots from Quarrelers. He's got the typical character damage resistance. Got some of the Graveguard sort of running along one flank over here. Wide charge from other stuff like the Hex Wraiths. The Hex Wraiths coming up against these dwarves with great weapons would be interesting because they would be able to deal tons of damage to them. I think that I'm not sure what caused that much damage to Manfred there. I'm assuming he must have been hit by a volley of cannonballs, but we're also seeing these guys getting shot quite a bit by the Quarrelers. Not 100% sure what he's flying this guy up around here for. It might be seeing a Spirit Leech running in from Manfred von Karstein over here. It looks like that is indeed what he's going to be focusing on. And then we see a big Goomba Stomp. Now, Ungrim Iron Fist is actually tough enough that he can take on Manfred von Karstein. Hammers are also going to be a bit of a danger to Manfred, so this is a really risky, dangerous thing for the dwarf player to be doing with their general. I would honestly get him out of there. Here we see a vortex from the undead. It is just not a very effective use of that magic, and here we can see that like Manfred is in severe trouble. He's going to definitely want to get him out of the fight here. I think that it is pretty good to tie up these units, but his other units are so far behind that they're not really getting any support from this. So we're going to see an invocation of Nihek going down on these Vargeist here. It's going to be too little too late. These guys have high hit points, which means that they're not heavily influenced by the invocation of Nihek. Now, they have done a good job of wrecking up this 1 unit of Quarrelers, but that's not a good trade since the Quarrelers are about half the price of a unit of Vargeist and certainly less important than their general. So that's going to be a rough trade for them. You've got a whole bunch of units just piling in on these Vargeist, and it's amazing that they're not disintegrating faster than they already have. Looks like Manfred is going to consider coming around to charge these cannons, perhaps. That would be a good target for them. Ungrim sort of doing his thing. We've got here the Hex Wraiths fighting against these Longbeards with great weapons, as well as, of course, the Runesmith. The Runesmith is what's going to hold this together, if anything. As you can see, these Hex Wraiths have taken considerable amounts of damage. I think that part of that damage is coming from the Rune of Wrath and Ruin. I suspect that that's probably what took most of the health out of this one. But other than that, these units of dwarves are kind of surrounded. They're taking quite a lot of damage. Graveguard from the front are going to be engaging these miners with blasting charges, and the blasting charges have done a little bit of preliminary damage. The dwarf shooters are still actually quite distracted in this fight, and one of the cannons was taken out when I wasn't paying attention there, so quite good for them. They're doing a decent job of clearing this out, but now that Manfred's in here, I think that they're going to be in significantly more trouble. If you can get rid of the Rune Priest here with Manfred, he's going to probably be able to crumble this ball of dwarven units pretty easily. They've got the Rune of Oath and Steel on there for plus 15 armor, but these are all armor-piercing units, so that's not going to have much effect. Miners over here are not going to have much contribution to the fight. Graveguard are going to manage to get into a cannon if he wants them to, but the Quarrelers are finally free to fire at the undead units. One of them is going to get charged in again. It's trying to sort of redraw the line for these ranged units, and it's not necessarily that easy given that the way the Dwarven units work. Zombies coming into the fight as well, but it looks like Choomander and Kief, so General Ungrim Ironfist is now in the fight with these Graveguard, and he's going to do a fantastic job. These guys do not have armor-piercing weapons, and they do also have difficulty with armor-piercing units, which Ungrim is. Actually, it doesn't look like... Yeah, he is an armor-piercing unit. Very, very high damage from him, too. Over here, multiple units of Graveguard engaging a single unit of miners. This is a bit of a waste of units. Got a whole bunch of other units sort of running into this fight over here, and they're going to be able to do a good job. Units of Crypt Horrors slowly regenerating as they fight this Runesmith. Runesmith is going to have a hard time dealing enough damage to permanently put down any of these Crypt Horrors, especially as he's getting sort of knocked around. Big charge from the undead, lots of them just coming straight in from the front, unfortunately, which is going to really hamper the effectiveness of this charge. Dwarf warriors here are going to be able to hold out for quite some time. Still got Vargeist in the back line, tearing things up and making things a little bit difficult. But these Graveguard just getting completely wrecked by Ungrim. Ungrim is taking more damage than I would have thought he would have from that unit. Taking a Spirit Leech as well, so that's going to knock down his hit points just a little bit. And finally we got Manfred coming into the back of these Dwarf Warriors. Dwarf Warriors are going to have a hard time against Undead when they've got this much armor piercing. Their damage is already low, so the Hex Wraiths are not going to be taking all that much from them. Looks like they finally cleared out the remainder of those Vargeists, and with those out of the way, the units that are sort of missile troops are going to have a much easier time getting back into the fight. Looks like one of the Crypt Horrors was killed by that Rune Priest, and he's about 2/3 health still. Hex Wraiths coming in to sort of start attacking these units of rallying dwarves here, and this is going to be a big charge against them. Crypt Horrors, I think, could probably do getting into those miners maybe, or into these crossbowmen. It looks like he's going for those Quarrelers. Big hits to these Hex Wraiths, to their morale. They're starting to crumble a little bit. Coming after these miners with blasting charges back there, trying to get rid of them. Then going into these Quarrelers, they're remaining mobile, keeping themselves in check there. And these warriors have broken, looks like. Ungrim over here getting a little bit wrecked by the sheer numbers of zombies and Graveguard that he's been forced to fight, but the Hammerers, now that he's mixed in with those, the Hammerers are a very, very good unit, very tough, very good against things like Graveguard. Zombies, they're a little bit wasted against, but it's not like they're going to have a hard time at all against those. Graveguard coming in here, and even then, like, this is still going to be a rough fight for the Graveguard. They're just such a high-quality unit. Very expensive, not necessarily worth the points, but when they work, do they ever work? Manfred getting picked away by Quarrelers, and that's actually going to be the end of him here. His stable binding, down he goes, so that's the end of the Undead General. With that gone, the Hex Wraiths are going to have an awfully difficult time. Crypt Horrors as well here. They've got debilitated morale, and the Hex Wraiths completely dead here. I think that it would have been a better idea to keep them sort of mobile, more so than he did. Yeah, these crossbowmen, the fact that those Quarrelers were able to take out the General, major, major blow. We've got Graveguard with great weapons, though, charging into them. They're going to be able to clear through these guys pretty quickly. Got some more charges from these Crypt Horrors. This is not necessarily a good place. I would have gotten them back in with the rest of his army. Here we've got Rune of Wrath and Ruin coming down on these guys. If they started running away, they'd be able to keep up their numbers through the regeneration, but as it is, that's not going to happen. And with no characters left for the vampire counts, they're going to have difficulty keeping the morale up before they start crumbling. Seeing some routing from the dwarves here, but I think that this is going to be just a matter of time before the binding on those undead units, especially the ones losing quite badly against these hammerers, starts really pulling through. Now, this is one of those close battles where it really did come down to the fact that that general did get sort of sloppy. If he hadn't stood there in front of those quarrelers, he could have easily gotten away, or if he had used a little bit saved up for that invocation of Nihek instead of using that vortex earlier on, he probably would have still been alive at this point in time and probably still kicking the ass of these dwarves from behind here. If you got a good rear charge against these hammerers, this would be a very decisive fight in the favor of the undead. Graveguard with great weapons are starting to lose. Skeletons have completely crumbled. These quarrelers not even having to fire at anything. Yeah, this is all in all going to be a definite dwarf victory at this point in time. There's just nothing really that could happen. Even if the general dies, I think that the dwarves have enough of a lead that they're going to win this fight. Yeah, so I'll have to review this one again. I do think that it was possible for the dwarves to get flanked, but this could still be an instance that could be considered corner camping, and that is one of the house rules for this tournament, is no corner camping is allowed in this particular one, and this one probably was pretty damn close to that. I mean, like he did have units stretched out across to here, so I'll think about it, but I don't necessarily know how much it would have made a difference in this particular case, since the main engagement ended up being up here, where the dwarves could have been easily flanked, so could very well be that it wouldn't have made a difference in this particular case, but we do want to keep with the rules. Now, that is one of those maps where that sort of thing tends to happen, so we also want to consider that. And lastly, of course, you know, dwarves do have that disadvantage. Here we've got Choomander and Kief with the undead against Kaza using the Empire. And again, this is one of those really great matchups because it is fairly 50-50. We've got the Empire the Empire General, the Witch Hunter, the Light Wizard. So again, a very assassination-focused sort of Empire army here. 2 Spearmen, 2 Swordsmen, Halberdier, 3 units of Handgunners, wow. 2 units of Demigryphs with Halberds, Mortar, Steam Tank. And for the undead, we've got Manfred von Karstein, 3 units of Zombies, 2 White Kings, 2 Skeletons, 2 Skeleton Spears, 3 Graveguard, 2 Cairn Wraiths, 2 Graveguard with Great Weapons, and 2 Crypt Horrors. So it's a fairly diversified undead list here. Now, the Steam Tank is going to be a problem in some senses, but it's going to vary depending heavily on how Manfred von Karstein sort of works, because Manfred is a great counter to that sort of unit. He is, however, on foot, making him particularly vulnerable to some shenanigans that the Empire could get into. So that Steam Tank could prove by itself kind of decisive. Over here we've got a big old wad of sort of units from the undead over here. Now the question is going to be, is there anything in the undead list that can actually catch up to that Steam Tank? And the question, I think, is no. I don't know that he brought any singular units that can keep up to it. These demigryph knights with halberds and the general lineup of Imperial infantry in the center is quite weak. Like each of these isolated by themselves like this could get taken out by the Cairn Wraiths quite badly. The Graveguard over here. Let's see if the White King... Yeah, the White Kings are on foot. If the White King was on horse, he could actually deal some good damage to the Steam Tank, but as things stand, this is going to be a really rocking, rough, hard fight for the undead. It's going to start off quite well, and you can see that this White King charging in quite cheerfully against these units of handgunners, and there's not a whole lot they can do to stop him. He could have sort of closed this gap, but I mean, now that the handgunners are in melee combat, that is going to be as it is. Graveguard, normal ones, should probably just try and get out of this fight here. The Steam Tank is going to do fantastically fine against that sort of thing. Crypt Horrors, however, coming around the flanks, able to get into these guns. He does manage to slam into a unit of demigryph knights with halberds. They didn't see that coming. Falls of Illumination coming in there. He's trying to snipe at the general here. You've got Accusation and you've got the Shem's Burning Gaze, but that's pretty much all the magic that he's got, and the single Accusation no longer really does the damage necessary. Witch Hunter getting into melee combat here against all this blob here. That with the demigryph knights gone, he's not going to be able to do much or last very long. Over here we've got the zombies having critical issues, but these handgunners getting completely mowed down. Demigryph knights over here similarly got caught up by the undead horde, and the Crypt Horrors and the Cairn Wraiths are going to do a fantastic job. The White King's also going to be pretty effective in that particular fight, especially because he's on foot. They're going to run out of the fight without having finished off that unit, but they're coming into this main conflict over here, bringing more units, Graveguard with Great Weapon, into the Steam Tank. Now, Steam Tank is pretty much invulnerable to non-armor piercing weapons, but with this unit of swordsmen coming in to distract, it might be a little bit difficult to actually get anything done there. Light Wizard stuck in combat now against all this horde of undead. The Witch Hunter is going to go down pretty quickly. Halberdiers came back here. I didn't really ever see where they came from, but I mean, at this point in time, if Manfred were to increase his health at all, he would be perfectly fine, but as it is, he's very slowly passively regenerating. We're seeing, I do believe, some sort of indication of Nihek coming down from this group here, but the Light Wizard over here getting overwhelmed. The Witch Hunter looks like he's routing as well, so this was going pretty well for the Vampire Count's player. So with Manfred still alive, he's still got a bit of a chance. All these units, though, that are fighting in this blob here are going to be getting completely wrecked. This unit of spearmen getting attacked in the rear, though, by these units of cryptors are going to be in trouble. They finally brought these units back into the fight. I'm wondering where the Karen Wraiths are. The Karen Wraiths are busy chasing off a unit of handgunners. That's actually a pretty good choice. They're a faster unit, able to run down units quite effectively. These guns and mortars, though, are still active. The steam tank is gonna just completely do work here. He needs these graveguards to turn around and start fighting these swordsmen more than anything. Demigryph Knights coming in as well. The binding on these guys, their crumbling, is going to cause them significant problems. Spearmen over here doing a good job, but these ones have finally routed, which means that those cryptors could get free and start attacking other things. Looks like Manfred is still... Yeah, Manfred is back up to full health. Graveguard with great weapons, as well as some cryptors running into the fray. If they start getting on that steam tank, which is taking quite a bit of damage, things could go quite well for the Vampire Count's player. You've got the White King mixing it up with the swordsman and the general of the Empire in there with the skeleton warriors and skeleton spears, but at this point in time, there's not a whole lot left of the main Imperial battle line. It's going to come down to whether or not the undead can take out that steam tank. This unit of handgunners is going to get borne down upon by all those undead, and there's not a whole lot left that they're going to be able to do about it. At this point in time, though, the Graveguard with great weapons and the Graveguard completely out of the fight. Essentially, they're going to be able to pick away at the steam tank just a little bit more, but it's actually losing quite a lot of health. It's letting itself sit in there amongst those Graveguard with great weapons far, far too long when it should have moved out of there, but that could be the end. That could spell the doom of it for the Empire player. Here comes the Cryptors from behind, trying to attack it as well. They've got excellent armor-piercing damage, so they're going to do huge damage to that steam tank, and if they get damage on that, that's going to be the end of the Empire. Alright, and you can see indeed that that is what ends up happening. Alright, so with that in mind, that is going to be the end of Game 3. This was a pretty good one. You don't often see the steam tank being used so aggressively against anything, and in this particular case, I do think that did not work out too well to use it so aggressively. I think what I'd like to see from the Empire players playing against the undead is to have a much more resilient battle line, because this is what you're seeing is these very thin battle lines that lose in the main fight. He did have some mismanagement as well, using those demigryphs. Last match here, we've got Choomander and Kief as Bretonnia, and he's against Kaza as the dwarves. So over here, we've got Luan Leoncourt and a paladin. We've got 3 units of spearmen with some chevrons. We've got men-at-arms with polearms. We've got a unit of Grail Knights, mounted yeomen, 2 of them, 2 units of Pegasus Knights, 2 field trebuchets against the Ungrim Iron Fist. Our first engineer, a runesmith, 2 units of Dwarf Warriors, 2 units of Longbeards, 2 units of Ironbreakers, 3 units of Thunderers, 2 cannons with some chevrons, which is a little bit weird that we're seeing chevrons on the cannons. Personally, I think that it would be much better to see them elsewhere. This is going to be a rough match for the dwarves, I find, because the Bretonnian flyers are just so hard to deal with for the dwarves. So I think that this is also going to be our first match which features absolutely no magic, but I could be wrong about that. So, yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. We've got the dwarves. I'm definitely going to call corner camping on this one. Good God. But, yeah, like, here's the thing, though. If both dwarf players are going to corner camp, you know what? I'm not going to penalize either of them. Here's the thing, though. Like, see how this is definitely a corner camp? Yeah, this is definitely a corner camp. The thing is, he's boxing, so it doesn't make a huge difference, and he's playing as dwarves. So, again, I mean, you kind of might feel like you want to give some leniency to this because there is no way for dwarves to win under certain circumstances, according to some people. Personally, I do actually think dwarves are a little bit better than people give them credit for, but not necessarily that much. I do think they are fighting from a disadvantage in most matchups, and Bretonnia is definitely one of the rougher matchups for them. Just because the Bretonnians have so much value in their infantry, they've got such excellent flyers, and they've got so much mobility, that does make it a little bit hard for people to play their matches in sort of a more normal way. So It's going to be interesting seeing how these field trebuchets fare against the dwarven sort of box over here. The thing is that if they can get some good free shots against the Thunderers, they're going to actually deal a huge amount of damage. The Master Engineer back here is going to have like a bit of an influence on this fight as well, since having these cannons with that extra rate of fire is going to be quite good, especially with this hill position. But yeah, I definitely feel like I need to reiterate to the players that there is a no corner camping rule in place. You can camp on a hill, you can camp on the on any sort of terrain that you want in this game. You just can't camp in the corner. And red line camping, I said, was acceptable. It's not red in this one, but if you're like lined up along this thing here, that's sort of acceptable, except in extreme cases. So I'll have to make sure to reiterate that. But in any event, we got the Bretonnians sort of getting ready to do a surround against these dwarves, and he's moving up these artillery pieces. These artillery pieces are armor piercing. They're very cheap. They're very effective. Very good splash radius on those shots. Dwarves moving those cannons up, but I think he's moved them in such a way that they're going to have difficulty firing. I think he's only going to fire with like 3 of these cannons out of the 6 of them. So it's not necessarily going to be the best positioning for them. The reason is that units that are directly in front of the cannon stop it from firing. And I think that's sort of what's happening here. So we'll find out what happens. I would like to see these Thunderers maybe in a slightly safer position, but we'll see how that goes. Looks like the cannons are starting to fire, and they're firing at the field trebuchets, I do believe. Not actually 100% sure where those shots went, but I don't think they hit anything. So could be that they're aiming at these flyers over here. Mounted yeomen could come up to start skirmishing a little bit. The only dwarven shooters are relatively short range and relatively slow, so if he kind of got around mostly to this side, he could probably shoot at them a little bit. Yeoman archers, though, are coming in to fight a little bit. Now, these Pegasus should not come in at this angle quite yet. I would say I would wait until other things are being fired at. Yeah, here comes some good shots there, hitting those Longbeards. Now, if I was going to fire at anything, I would fire either at the... yeah, it looks like he is aiming at the Thunders. It looks like he just overshot. I would actually fire at the Ironbreakers because these are armor-piercing shots. Very effective against units like Ironbreakers. I think the cannons did take out some shots against take out some crew of that field trebuchet, though. Good damage against it. None of the field trebuchets themselves were actually taken out. More shots coming in against those Thunderers. Those are going to be very, very important in this fight. Looks like we got some buffs coming down on these cannons, or potentially there's moving in and out of the buff radius of that. Ironbreakers as well do get a buff from the Master Engineer, so that's interesting to see that happening. Paladin is running in, and I suspect that he's going to cause these Ironbreakers to fire their demolition charges at him. And if that happens, that's going to be a tremendous waste of those, because they don't deal a whole lot of damage to individual characters, obviously. More shots coming in from those catapults, dealing huge damage. I would love to see the kill counts on these. 20 kill count, 5 kill count. Oh, that's peculiar that that one's so much worse. But we see some knights, some Pegasus knights flying in on these Thunderers. They probably need to get them out. Rune of Wrath and Rune, I suspect, coming down on one of the units of Pegasus Knights as well. Looks like those blasting charges are being used against the Paladin over here, who has run into the combat with the Ironbreakers. Now, the other blasting charges, though, are being used on these Spearmen at Arms with shields, who are going to get knocked around silly. Absolutely doing very, very little there. Lowen Leoncor managing to get back out of the fight. A lot of Thunderers still in the background there. Yeoman sort of coming around to pester these units. Looks like Lowen Leoncor and his Air Flying Corps is going to come back in. Looks like they think better of it. Got a general engagement coming in from these halberdiers into things like Ironbreakers. That Paladin, having taken their charges, is going to be quite good. Big charge coming in against the cannons, against the Thunderers. This unit of Thunderers is still uncommitted, though, so they're perfectly fine. Here Lowen Leoncor goes into those Thunderers, and that's going to really disrupt them. Getting shots against these Longbeards and such. Ungrim Iron Fist trying to get into the fight here. These units of Pegasus Knights are getting a little bit damaged. Coming in with a big flank from these Grail Knights. They're not getting the best of charges, but they are coming in there quite effectively. We're seeing some silence from these field trebuchets now. I don't think that they've got a good thing to fire at this moment. One of the cannons gets blown up by Lowen Leoncor. Pegasus Knights managing to get relatively safely out of the combat. This Master Engineer being caught in melee combat is not the best position for him. Rune of Wrath and Rune coming down on the Master Mounted Yeoman Archers. Not a great choice right now. Like, they are a good choice to take rid of. Get rid of in that sense, but here comes a big rear charge from the Bretonnians against the Dwarf Warrior Longbeard unit. And yeah, these dwarves are just so surrounded. Like, they broke up their box a little bit to try and fight a little bit differently, partly because their front line was just these units of Thunderers, and the Thunderers don't do necessarily that well as a frontline combatant, so that's the thing about using a box formation is you need to be able to fully box it in, and you want missile units that can fire over the heads of your troops. Thunderers are not the best choice for that, obviously. And of course, when you're facing off against an opponent in Total War Warhammer, they could just always take units that are capable of getting in over your heads into the center of the box, and this is exactly what we sort of saw here. Seeing some runes coming down from our runesmith over here, and these Grail Knights stopping their charge against this small unit of Thunderers. They really need to get into those Thunderers. You've got Ungrim Iron Fist as well as charging into them along with that runesmith, getting shots against them with that Master Engineer, and our game is freezing just at the most intense parts of it. We've got lots and lots of Bretonnians just surging up this hill into these Ironbreakers and such, but the Dwarves are holding up a position a lot better than I would have thought they would have. Oh, we're seeing some blasting charges as well coming in here. Or no, those are projectiles from the field trebuchets, I think. Or no, those are satchel. What are those? Yeah, those are satchel charges. Why are they being thrown upwards? Being thrown at the mounted yeomen back here. Interesting. But yeah, the mounted yeomen are quite difficult for the dwarves to deal with. We do see the Grail Knights finally charging into those Thunderers and away from Ungrim Iron Fist and the Rune Priest. It would have been very, very bad for them to have been engaged in a fight with him, because he is very, very good at that armor-piercing damage. So we've got 6 minutes left to this match here, and we've got our computer not running at all. Fantastic. Alright, that looks like that's smoothed out. Okay, so Spearman Arms coming in to tie down these units of Dwarf Warriors here. Now, you've got a lot of flyers still for the Bretonnian player. You've got another Rune of Wrath and Ruin coming down on these Mounted Yeoman Archers, and that's going to cause them a lot of damage. They're almost dead as it is. Some knightly charges coming in from the Pegasus Knights into the backs of these Ironbreakers, and if you can get rid of those, that's going to be a big swing in favor of Bretonnia. Bretonnia taking out those Thunderers over there. Alright, seeing shots coming in from those field trebuchets, I think. But looks like we got the Bretonnians doing a pretty good job of getting those Grail Knights into that Master Engineer. Getting Lewin Leoncor into Ungrim Iron Fist. Now, he is a pretty dangerous opponent, but as you can see, we've got Lewin Leoncor just riding by, knocking him over, causing a little bit of damage, and then continuing on, so it's not going to be too easy to bog him down using the remaining dwarves, because most of the dwarves are engaged in combat. Grail Knights are getting some good hits in, but nothing too fantastic since they aren't getting good charges. They don't have the greatest armor-piercing damage. These units of Ironbreakers and such going to be very, very difficult for Lewin Leoncor to crack through, even, and let alone the Halberdiers. So we're going to have to see who that ends up going to, but they are, yeah, with Rune of Oath and Steel and Rune of Negation, they're going to be taking no damage for the next few seconds. But that doesn't last too much longer, and look how much Bretonnian infantry there is pressing in here. Like, the stuff that they're actually fighting here is fairly limited, but the number of Bretonnians left, still quite imposing. The Ironbreakers over here as well are kind of facing the wrong direction, because they're fighting in a circle all around them. So these pikes, these halberds rather, are sort of stabbing their way at these dwarven units, these Ironbreakers, heavily armored, but Halberdiers are armor-piercing, so they are going to be able to deal some good damage to them. Got Lewin Leoncor coming in here into the fight, and that's going to knock out these Ironbreakers. You've still got Ungrim Iron Fist doing a good job. He's still alive. He's still well. This Engineer is not taking like any damage. Grail Knight's coming into Ungrim and his remaining bodyguard of Dwarf Warriors there, as well as that Runesmith. The Runesmith, I think, using Rune of Wrath and Ruin on Pegasus Knights. Already pretty low numbers there. Paladin finally routs. I'm amazed that that Paladin lasted that long, but he's out finally. But all that's left really are these Ironbreakers once they're down. It's just going to be a matter of cleaning off Ungrim Iron Fist, and Lewin Leoncor can take his time before taking him out. Lewin Leoncor having regeneration is going to be a good choice to fight Ungrim Iron Fist, because if he gets a little bit low, he can just sit in a corner for a few minutes, get back into the fight later, and be done with it. You can see these rocks coming in from the field trebuchet, and I suspect they're actually causing more damage to the Bretonnians at this point in time than they are to the dwarves. But, I mean, he might as well. He's got enough of a lead. Grail Knight's taking so many hits from them, though, that I think that they're out of the fight. Got Dwarf Warriors coming back into the fight, going up against Lewin Leoncor. Going to rout pretty quickly, I would imagine. This Engineer, though, probably has gotten a lot of free damage off. He's got 16 kills. I mean, that gun from the Master Engineer is actually quite credible. So, Mounted Yeoman in here in melee combat with the Master Engineer, that's going to be a little bit of a bad fight. what's this called? Runesmith back in the fight. Targeting again the mounted human archers with Rune of Wrath and Ruin. That's not the right choice again at this point in time. Well, no, actually, there's not much left here that really is a crucial target for them. So that could be definitely considered the appropriate target. We've got Spearmen and we've got Halberdiers piling into this fight. The Paladin's back in the fight as well, but he's again routing because I think he got hit in the face by one of his own rocks. Certainly these Halberdiers, polearms, are getting hit by their own rocks. Runesmith getting charged by Lowen Leoncoeur, but using the Rune of Negation to stop any damage from that coming in against him. I think that this Master Engineer, if he's popping his shots particularly off against Lowen Leoncoeur, is going to be doing a good job of dealing some damage there. But instead, we've got Ungrim getting charged by Lowen Leoncoeur, and that's going to deal some pretty big damage to him, knocking him over, stopping him from fighting for a second there. These Halberdiers is going to be able to start giving a pick at him as well. Depth charges coming in, blasting charges coming in against Lowen Leoncoeur, doing a little bit of damage, not very much, as Ungrim Iron Fist starts trying to fight and hew his way out of there. These Bretonnians are starting to flee the battle because they're so close to the table edge, but it's going to be a questionable thing here. We've got a Death of Ungrim Iron Fist. We've got a Rune of Wrath and Ruin on this unit of Halberds, which is going to be out of the fight. He needs to take out this Runesmith and this Master Engineer at this point in time. We're seeing the Bretonnians sort of retreating their units back, and they're going to let those catapults do their work for a few seconds here. Paladin back in the fight, Spear unit back in the fight. So the dwarves are going to have to get in towards against the Bretonnians. The Bretonnians probably need to be firing at individual sort of units of dwarves here rather than at these individual targets. The field trebuchet is just not accurate enough. I think that it's going to be interesting to see if the dwarves can rush that artillery successfully, because at this point in time there's very, very little that they can do to stop the air units of the Bretonnians. Those air units are just very, very tough to deal with. Now, the runes coming back could be good for... he's using up those charges against a unit that really doesn't need to... He doesn't need to use charges against, since they're shattered, but they were already out of the fight, essentially. This unit of Halberdiers might rally, but it doesn't really matter tremendously if they do. Looks like, actually, yeah, they've still got one unit of Halberdiers in here. Something killed, I think, Rune of Wrath and Ruin. Yeah, Rune of Wrath and Ruin started hitting that unit of Pegasus Knights. They're going to drop before they can do too much, but they are getting a charge off against the Master Engineer. Looks like Lowen Leoncoeur is taking some pretty bad damage. I wonder what hit him there. Ironbreakers, though, not necessarily going to do too much. Runesmith now routing against the commander there. He needs to get in there against that Master Engineer, though. Like, that is the target that I would say he needs to go for. Like, the Rune of Wrath and Ruin does not do too much damage against a regenerating lord like Lowen Leoncoeur. He is going again for the Ironbreakers, however. It's another good choice in a sense. Here they've broken at this point in time. I do think that the Master Engineer probably will break soon. We're seeing some shattering from those dwarven units. More rocks coming in. Those field trebuchets have been a very, very good addition to this particular list, and Choomander and Kief does take the series with that win. So that was a pretty good use of Bretonnia's strengths there. I'll have to have a talk with my players about not corner camping, although, you know, leeway because dwarves. I think that to a certain extent, the dwarves don't. I've played dwarves enough to know that you don't really need to do that to win with them, but yeah, we'll have to see how things go there. Yeah, and that was a pretty interesting match. A lot of action going on, lots of constant things going on, very, very close at the end, kind of thing that you like to see. Anyway, I hope you found this video enjoyable, and of course, as always, I hope to see you all next time.